Welcome to Eggs and Issues, a monthly business forum presented by the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce, bringing timely economic discussion to the region for nearly 40 years. Thank you to our sponsors and partners. Presenting sponsors, Martins Point Healthcare, Bernstein Schur, and Central Maine Power. Cooperating sponsors, Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare and Bank of America. Reception sponsors, Clark Insurance, Key Bank, and Pretty Flaherty. Community Corner sponsor, Goral Palmer. Tomorrow's leaders and entrepreneurs sponsors, AAA Northern New England and ProSearch. Coffee sponsor, Skowhegan Savings. Parking sponsor, Vitalius Real Estate Group. Media partners, radio sponsor, WGAN. Print sponsor, Maine Trust for Local News. TV sponsor, WMTW Maine CW. Business news sponsor, Maine Biz. Venue partner, University of Southern Maine. And thank you to our special community partners, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, Kennebec Savings Bank, MEMIC, Spectrum Healthcare Partners, Southern Maine Community College, and the University of Southern Maine. And now, please welcome Portland Community Chamber President, Mary Costigan.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Eggs and Issues. My name is Mary Costigan. I'm a shareholder at Bernstein Schur, and I am honored to serve as the volunteer president of the Portland Community Chamber of Commerce. Today's topic, Bold Science for Our Blue Planet, invites President and CEO of Bigelow Laboratory of Ocean Sciences, Dr. Deborah Bronk, to the stage to summarize how their innovative approach to ocean science has transformed the nonprofit from a scrappy startup to an internationally renowned leader. Before we move on to today's programming, I first want to tell everybody about the Portland Regional Chamber of Commerce's annual awards event, Imagine Portland. It's going to be taking place on Thursday, June 20th from 4 to 6:30 p.m. at Aura. This awards event is an opportunity to celebrate the region's stars, its true leaders, who have made an impact through workforce development, innovation, and community collaboration in the greater Portland region. Join us on June 20th to honor our 4 award winners. Our Champion Award is going to Northern Light Mercy Hospital. Our Catalyst Award is going to Adila Mohammed. She is the president and executive director of the third place. Our Collaborator Award is going to Cullen Ryan. He is the executive director of Community Housing of Maine. If you were here a few months ago, he was on this stage. And our Volunteer of the Year is Jim Cohen, who is a partner at Verrill. To learn more about this event, our incredible award winners, and to register, please visit portlandregion.com. I want to again thank all of our sponsors of Eggs and Issues who make this event possible for the entire season. Without their investment, we simply would not be here. A very sincere thank you to our special community partners. These organizations support all of our events throughout the year. Now I'm going to turn to our community corner. You saw out in the hall, that's where our community corner is. And this month it is Ketcha Outdoors, formerly Camp Ketcha. They rebranded in 2018, but many of you may be like me and just learned that today. Ketcha Outdoors is a nonprofit in Southern Maine. It offers a diverse outdoor education program since 1964. Committed to providing opportunities to outdoors and active in nature, they provide affordable access to gear and activities to encourage health, sustainability, and build strong communities. They offer an ACA-accredited summer camp, a nature-focused preschool, and various school vacation programs. Ketcha offers year-round outdoor programs for over 1,000 children aged 4 to 14, community events throughout the year, event venue rentals, and several miles of hiking trails on its Scarborough campus. They believe that engagement with nature supports physical and mental well-being, promotes environmental responsibility, and unites people from diverse backgrounds. Ketcha Outdoors also powers the Portland Gear Hub, something else I learned today. An outdoor gear shop in Portland's East Bayside, staffed by experienced mechanics and supported by over 500 volunteers annually. They offer bike mechanic classes and instruction for the community, including Bikes for All Mainers program, which gives hundreds of bikes annually to kids and adults from the Portland region. and have kept over 10,000 bikes out of landfills. Interested in recycling your old bikes and gear? Visit them at 155 Washington Ave to donate. Want to fix your bike? You can join a mechanics class at the bike school on Anderson Street or visit the open bench time on 3 to 6 p.m. to learn with the Gear Hub team. This year, Catch Outdoors has received more requests from families for financial assistance than they can fulfill. Your contribution can help more families in Maine enjoy outdoor activities with Catch Outdoors this summer and fall. Please support their campaign, Here to Stay, which will enable them to purchase their building on Washington Avenue and maintain the Gear Hub as a vital community resource. Learn more at portlandgearhub.org and follow on Instagram at Portland Gear Hub. There are members of Camp. I just said it, Camp. Gotcha. Catch Outdoors here today. If you could please stand and be recognized. Through our Tomorrow's Leaders and Entrepreneurs program, we have students joining us today from Gorham High School, Southern Maine Community College, University of Southern Maine, and University of New England. If you could also please stand and be recognized, please. And this is your Eggs and Issues reminder to validate your parking using the Honk app, and make sure you look at the fine print and enter your promo code of Eggs Park. If you have any questions, there's information out in the lobby. Now on to today's presentation. I would like to welcome to the stage President and CEO of Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences, Dr. Deborah Bronk.
The ocean is our planet's greatest treasure. It provides the oxygen we breathe and the food that we eat. It drives the global processes that make life on Earth possible. At Bigelow Laboratory, we study the foundation of global ocean health, and we use that knowledge to unlock the potential to improve the future for all life on our planet. Most of the life in the ocean is tiny, it's microscopic in size, but these unseen organisms have enormous influence on the planet and hold endless potential for a better tomorrow. The ocean is our planet's largest and most important ecosystem. It is a source of endless wonder and optimism, and I know we've just begun to unlock its potential.
So one little 1-minute snapshot of that video to give you a sense of Bigelow, and I'm going to spend the next 25 minutes filling in and providing some more structure and color to what Bigelow is. So we live on an ocean planet. 70% of the surface of Earth is covered by ocean. And as you heard in the video, half of the oxygen we're breathing right now is coming and produced in the ocean. It's also a major economic driver globally, and it produces the food for 3.5 billion people on this planet. And if the projections are correct, in the next 20 years, that will double. If you've heard anything about the ocean recently, it probably hasn't been very good news. And unfortunately, that's a pretty accurate assessment of what's going on out there. We are seeing die-offs of marine species. We are seeing sea level rise around the planet. And this is a graph showing the increase in temperature that we're seeing in the ocean. And really nowhere is that temperature increase larger than in our own Gulf of Maine. And this is a problem because, as one example of the economic impact of the ocean, the seafood sector alone contributes over $3 billion to Maine's economy. So, which is why Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Science is so important. We are an independent nonprofit. We are celebrating our 50th year this year. And so it's a big year for us. We do research all around the world, as well as in the Gulf of Maine. This is a shot of some of our researchers working in the Arctic. We also have scientists that work routinely in the Antarctic. But what's amazing, I find, about this work, that despite all the bad news that's coming out about how the ocean is doing, that I consistently show up at work and we find reasons for hope. And so Bigelow is really, for me, it's about a place for hope for the future. We see the hope in the young people that we are training every year to go on and be scientists, and also hope in all the opportunities we see in the ocean if we'll just take the time to look for them. This could be new food sources, new food systems and industries, new technologies or approaches, things that we learn in our research around the world that we then bring back to Maine. This is things like new novel compounds or medicinals. All of these things have the potential to be economic drivers and to solve society's problems. Again, we just need to be looking for them. So as you heard, I'm Debbie Bronk. I'm the president and CEO of Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences. But I spent most of my career as a research scientist. And everywhere you see one of these yellow stars is one of my research sites. I'm an oceanographer by training, and I study nitrogen, which is an element that all of us need, all organisms need. And I study how those organisms in the ocean use nitrogen and how it controls their growth. I also did a service in Washington, D.C., where I was director for the Division of Ocean Sciences at the National Science Foundation. So NSF is the agency that funds research across all science and engineering disciplines. And it gave me a really good broad view of how science is done, all science is done in this country. I also was elected to 2 different science societies as president, both related to marine science. And so I visited most of the marine labs and universities that have marine programs around the country. And that has given me a really robust view of the different approaches that different places use to study the ocean. And it was through this lens that I viewed Bigelow when I first visited it back in 2015 when I was invited to give a talk on my research in the Arctic. And I got to say, I was blown away. I think, yes, there's a lot of amazing research that's being done at Bigelow, but our business model is also something that I think the world really needs to hear more about because it is, bar none, the most efficient model I've ever seen of doing science. So we empower exceptional scientists, and we attract them from all around the world. In fact, that's one of the reasons we are so committed to immigration reform, because we want the best and the brightest from all around the planet to come to this country. We'd love for them to come to Bigelow. We are an independent institute, so we are not affiliated with a large university, so we don't have the bureaucracy that comes with part of a larger organization. That allows us to be very nimble in terms of taking advantage of opportunities. It also allows us to be nimble in responding to challenges like global pandemics, which were not in my job description when I was hired. We provide the shared resources needed to drive discovery. So the traditional model at most universities, and that I spent my whole career in, is scientists build out all of the equipment and analyses that they need to do the research. At Bigelow, we have shared analytical facilities. They are run by professionals that's what they do. And all of our scientists can access all these various analyses to do their work. It allows our scientists to really focus on the question and not whether a bunch of instruments are running right that day. It's an incredibly lean and efficient way of doing science. We invest in the most promising ideas at the intersection of disciplines. So we're not all a bunch of oceanographers. We want scientists from many different disciplines to come and help us look at ocean problems. So we have mathematicians, chemists, physicists, and it's on purpose that we want to work at that intersection, because if you look at the history of science, some of the most transformative discoveries by science has been at that intersection, and we're designed to do that. It also means our scientists don't have to worry about bumping into disciplinary boundaries. They can take their research wherever it goes, and sometimes it goes into pretty surprising areas, which I will tell you about. We have about 120 staff. They are encompassed in 20 research groups, each which is headed up by a senior research scientist. Our funding is about 75% contracts and grants, 15% philanthropy, and about 5% are fee-for-service activities that I'll tell you more about. And we're growing. So I arrived in 2018, and our annual revenue has increased significantly since then. We are also increasing our staff. So this year, we hope to add 2 new senior research scientists that we will recruit from around the country and around the world to come and build new research programs at Bigelow. We are also growing in terms of infrastructure. So this is a rendering of our new $31 million Center for Ocean Science Education and Innovation. And I want to call out right up in the front row, this was designed by Portland's Harriman Architects. and it is being built by Consigli Construction, which is just, they've been amazing to work with. So woohoo to both of those partners.
What do you think?
That, if I forgot to say that, they were going to stand up. So, okay, so that's a little snapshot of what Bigelow is. So what do we actually do? So we study the foundation of global ocean health, and we use our discoveries to improve the future for all life on the planet. And I know that's a big statement, but I think it really speaks to the power is if you can address issues in the ocean, the magnitude of the impact that you can have. So what is the foundation of global ocean health? It is the microbes. It's the microscopic plants is where it all starts. These are tiny organisms, also called algae or phytoplankton. Just like the plants in your yard, they take carbon dioxide and nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus and the energy from the sun, and that's what they use to grow. They come in many, many different forms, including single-celled organisms, all the way up to colonial types, which very few are visible to the naked eye. But if you look in a tiny bottle of water, you will have millions of these organisms. And the potential that these guys have to impact many parts of our economy is great. And Bigelow, at Bigelow, we have over 3,000 cultures of these organisms, different types of these organisms in culture, as part of the National Center for Marine Algae and Microbiota. So we are the congressionally mandated culture collection for the United States. And we sell our cultures all around the world to researchers and industry and businesses. We also study bacteria and viruses. So these guys exert a lot of control over what happens in the ocean, both what a food chain looks like in any given region, and also how carbon and nutrients flow through the ocean and where they end up. We study the organisms that eat phytoplankton and bacteria, which we call zooplankton. And this is an example of, can you turn down the lights so that these are so pretty? I didn't notice how they're gorgeous on the screen I'm looking at. Keep going. This is an ostracod. This is a copepod. So these guys are about the size of a grain of rice. They are hands down the most numerous animal on the planet. And they do vertical migrations every day from the surface to the deep and back again. It's the largest animal migration on the planet, happens every day, and hardly anyone has ever heard of it. They're also really important because they eat the phytoplankton, and then they're the connector that then is eaten by fish and whales, and you don't get a lobster without a whole lot of copepods somewhere in that system. We study beautiful things like gelatinous zooplankton, which also serve that same role in the environment. Oh, isn't that as much nicer? It's got better ambiance. Thank you. And then we go all the way up to lobsters. And these are different larval forms of lobster, which they go through many. Now, adult lobsters are pretty robust. Once they become adults, they're pretty sturdy. But it turns out our research has shown that these larval forms, these baby lobsters, are really hard hit by warming temperatures and things like ocean acidification. We study corals, which are the foundational species where they exist. And unfortunately, this is an example of an organism that is going through catastrophic die-offs, especially in the southern hemisphere right now. And we study very large plants in the ocean, macroalgae, things like kelp and rockweed. These are important nursery habitats for marine species. They are also a growing part of the Maine economy. So we use our research studying those organisms to create discoveries about the ocean and its potential, to find solutions that address local and global challenges, and inspiration through education, training, and outreach. And I'm going to go through each one of those three things and give you some examples. So we have three major discovery themes that we kind of focus our research around at Bigelow. And the first is ocean health and function. You can't protect the ocean or heal the ocean if you don't understand it. So a lot of our work is looking at how does the ocean behave and how does it function? One example of this work is we work with resource managers in the state to study pathogens. This is an example of it. This is an epizootic shell disease that is being observed in the Gulf of Maine and the lobsters there now. And this could be a really tough year for that, according to some early data that I just heard about yesterday. this work is important because as temperatures increase, you're going to see an increase in pathogens if the past is prologue. And so we want to get ahead of these things before they become real problems. All of our research that we're doing is going on a changing planet. And so a big part of our work is defining what those changes are and how those changes impact what humanity needs the ocean to do. An example of this is some of the work, this is from the Arctic. We have scientists that are looking at how carbon dioxide and methane, which are two really important greenhouse gases, move between the ocean, the atmosphere, and ice. And this information is really important because it's used in the global models that scientists are using to forecast what's going to happen in the future. And the more robust we can make those forecasts, the better able we're going to be able to handle what's coming at us and find the opportunities in what's coming at us. And the last of our three themes is the ocean's potential. So in just a drop of water, there are millions of algae and bacteria and viruses, and each one of those has its own genetic code. When you think about the potential that these cells can do, if we can unravel and understand that code, is almost limitless. And so part of what we're doing is trying to define and harness the potential in microbes. One example of that is, clean enough, has to do with cows. Remember I said we let the science go wherever it goes. And in our place, we are looking for a whole lot of cows in research herds. So it turns out that when cows eat, they have microbes in their gut that produce methane, and that methane is then burped out into the atmosphere. And that's a big problem because methane is a really potent greenhouse gas. It is also a problem for the farmer, because if that energy is going into producing methane, it's not going into producing meat or milk. It turns out that if you feed cows kelp, they don't produce nearly as much methane. So we have a scientist at the lab that studies methane-producing bacteria, and working with a large team, he is working to develop a supplement. We're now in field trials that if you feed it, it's made out of algae, and if you feed it to cows, they don't produce as much methane. And we're working and are going to continue to work hard in the future to try to get that out into the market, which could be just a wonderful impact on atmospheric methane production. So that's an example of solutions. So I'm moving into our solution-based work. So one of the ways that Bigelow creates solutions is that we develop cutting-edge tools, and we have a long history of doing this. For example, the co-founder of Bigelow Laboratory, Charlie Yench, was the guy who went to NASA with some back-of-the-envelope calculations and said, you put up a satellite, I think we can use that to study the ocean. And he really was a pioneer, and satellite oceanography is something we're strong in today. One example of a tool that we're developing now and is in use and continue to refine is this is a forecast of where harmful algal blooms are predicted to appear, and that where we need to close areas to fishing or shellfish production. And this is all powered by artificial intelligence. So harmful algal blooms are cells that phytoplankton, just like the plants in your yard, they bloom. And when they bloom to high numbers, if they are the kinds of cells that produce toxin, then they become harmful. And that's where the harmful algal bloom name comes from. And it's a problem because if they're in the water and say a mussel or an oyster is filtering that water, if you then eat that mussel or oyster, it's going to make you sick. So we want to protect, the seafood industry is so important in the state of Maine. So what this tool is being used for is to target where we really need to be attention, focus our sampling to make sure that if we need to close areas, and we work with Maine DMR on this, that with Maine Department of Marine Resources, we will be able to close those beds in time. In another area, Bigelow also does the biotoxin testing for the state of Maine using a state-of-the-art chemical method, not a bunch of mice. If there are any people in Jackson Lab, that was not a hit to mice. But let me be honest, ours is better. So we do this analysis, and that's a critical piece to keep seafood in Maine safe and to protect that all-important Maine brand. We have scientists that study a whole slew of environmental challenges. One example is we work with state and local communities on water quality issues. And a big one in the state of Maine that I'm sure you have read about in the paper is PFAS, forever chemicals. So things like Gore-Tex and Teflon, fantastic inventions, wonderful that they are so valuable because they're so sturdy, right? You can fry an egg on Teflon and it doesn't break down. The problem is when you put that in the environment, the unintended consequence of that toughness is it never goes away. And it turns out that those compounds also can produce negative health effects. So Bigelow was one of the first labs to set up a PFAS analysis for the state of Maine. And we're working now to try to define where the concentrations are highest in the environment, and almost more importantly, where they're not high, so that we can alleviate some of the concern and anxiety that people feel around these chemicals. We also use our expertise and our resources to do training and services, both for scientists around the world, but also businesses and industry. One example is for many years, we have been teaching courses in harmful algal bloom taxonomy. Taxonomy is identifying the different species. So teaching people, researchers, environmental managers, how to identify the cells that they need to be worried about and they need to pay attention to if they're in their waters. We also, more recently, have started offering things in bioinformatics, which is like the Swiss Army knife of the future. With bioinformatics, that's a tool that we use to analyze really massive data sets. Things like trying to figure out all of the genetic potential in a sample of seawater, all the way up to what a doctor or a medical center would use to try to develop personalized medicine. Going to be a really important tool for a lot of people to have in the future. And we do a whole slew of different analytical services. Things like ocean forecasting tools, things that can serve the renewable energy sector, water quality and human health, aquaculture and fisheries. All of these analyses were developed or we run because they serve our own research. But we open it up and take in samples as fee for service because that helps us, one, pay for our instruments and keep them running. And it also gives us ideas for new services and analyses. Because again, we want lots of different minds, including industry minds we partner with, to help us figure out new ways of doing things. So if you've got an analytical need, I might be able to help you. Well, not me personally, but somebody in the lab. And then our last foci is inspiration. So we bring students in, and I'm talking to the students right now. We bring students onto our campus and we immerse them in the research that we're doing, and we teach them fundamental lessons from foundational science. And this is anywhere from high school students around the state of Maine all the way to postdoctoral scholars that come to us from all around the world. One example is the Keller Bloom program, which has been going strong for 33 years. With this program, we bring high school juniors from across the state of Maine. They come, they live at the lab for a week for this intense field and laboratory experience. And we teach them not just how to do some science, we teach them how to think like a scientist, right? Creatively, critically. And that's something that they hopefully will take with them into whatever career path they take in the future. We also provide hands-on experience with state-of-the-art technology. Anything from a supercomputer to a 3D printer that we can teach them how to use to make the tool that maybe they need for their project, but they can't find anywhere. An example of this is Sea Change. So Sea Change is a semester-long program we teach in the fall in partnership with Colby College. These students come, they live on our campus, and we get them out into the field. They run independent projects, and it's just a fantastic experience that can launch them into careers in science. And we've had, I see James Herbert is here, and we had students from University of New England in our program, and Charles Tilburg also here. And all of the students we bring to our campus, we give them creative, we get them to do creative science really at the front line of discovery. And that's important because these are not just textbook lessons that we're teaching them. We bring them in, we immerse them in the lab, we make them part of the research teams. And it's just a fantastic way to learn science. These are a picture of some of our research experience for undergraduate students. These students come, they spend the entire summer with us, they live in our residence, they work in the labs, and each one of them has to design and execute an independent research project. And we set the bar high, right? We want them to do real science. Many of these students go on to publish their results in peer-reviewed journals, or their project might be part of a larger project, and then they're included as a co-author on a paper that comes out later. And I'm going to end with a 1-minute video that is going to talk about our graduate program in partnership with the University of Maine from a former sea change student.
My name's Sydney Greenlee, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Maine in Bigelow Laboratory for Ocean Sciences, and I study harmful algal blooms using environmental DNA techniques. After my sea change experience, I was invited to go on a 6-week-long research expedition in the Southern Ocean. The things you're learning in the sea change field course out on the research vessel, that's like real research techniques. These techniques directly scaled up to this 6-week-long research expedition. Bigelow is big, has a lot of resources, but yet it is also small enough to build really deep connections, not only with your mentor that you've been paired with, but a lot of people at the lab. My sea change semester project was developing environmental DNA tools for detecting the invasive lacy-bride zone in the Gulf of Maine. Something that I'm proud of is that several Maine eDNA grad students are actually using this quantitative PCR test that I developed for the lacy-bride zone in their own dissertation research. I'm really excited to be doing research that people on the coast of Maine can use to support the shellfish industry. I had never thought about how powerful microbes in the ocean could be until I came to Bigelow. The biggest thing I gained from the sea change program was confidence. Everyone can be a scientist.
Sydney works right outside of my office, and so that's where her lab is. So that's a snapshot of Bigelow. I hope I am leaving you inspired about all the possibilities on ways we can improve the health of the ocean, as well as, catalyze the economy, and inspired to learn more about us in the future. I encourage you all to sign up for our monthly newsletter. It's a shot in the arm every month of some of the cool stuff that Bigelow is doing. And I want to ask all of you to consider being an ambassador for us. It kills me when I hear people in Maine that still have never heard of Bigelow, because we are one of the top labs in the world doing this work, and it's the feather in the cap of Bigelow of Maine, and everyone should know about it. And also, our nonprofit work is only possible because of friends and supporters in Maine and beyond. So talk about Bigelow tonight over maybe not the dinner table. We don't want wider than that. In your neighborhood at the next potluck, we have materials out front that you can pick up and take with you, and take extra and spread them around. We need more people to know about the work that we're doing. And finally, is there someone you can introduce me to? I would love to get up and give one of these talks or a talk on any one of those projects every day of the week if I could. We need to get more people to be aware. So, and we're also always looking for potential board members, donors, and industry partners that we can work with. So that's my email. I also want to introduce you to Jennifer Kutchell, who is our Vice President for Strategic Alliances and Advancement. And I'm going to call out a few other people. It would be Beth Orcutt, who is our Vice President for Research, Michael Villarello, who works in our Advancement office. They all live in Portland. You could have lunch with them. Well, maybe not Beth. She's super busy. Don't take her away from me. I also want to call out some of our wonderful board members. Michael Conathan is sitting here in the front. Barb Burgess is sitting in the front, and Bill Burgess, who was our board chair for 4 years, and we would not have a new wing going in the ground without Bill. So with that, if you have any questions for me, I'll do my best to answer them. And thank you so much for your time this morning.
Well,
Bill Burgess, former chair. Deb, could you just talk a little bit about soft money research and how a senior research scientist lives in the research world versus an academic world?
That's a great point. We need to add that to the talk. So our scientists get 12 weeks of salary a year. Everything else they bring in with contracts and grants. And I think that's a really important part of our model, because you can't just ride on your laurels, right? We don't offer tenure. You have to bring, your science and your creativity every day. It also means that, we're constantly worried about, how federal science funding is going. we're very, very competitive for federal grants, as long as those federal grant opportunities are there. So that's why a philanthropy and partnerships with industry can be really important for us to supplement the grant and contract streams. Some of these students should be asking questions right now, says the former college professor.
Hi, Deb. My name's Carissa Kerr. I'm a GMRI. I just had a question of the different universities that you partner with. Can you speak a little bit more about how you've partnered with them and maybe how diverse they've been?
Right. So we have partnerships with UNE, as I mentioned. We have some of their students come here or gone and given talks there. James Herbert and I survived a TEDx talk together. We partner with UMaine. That's where the graduate students currently that we have on our campus are partnerships with UMaine. We have also had graduate students from a number of institutions around the country where our scientists are involved in projects with scientists at other universities. So we have a pretty flexible model. The other thing, though, that we're doing is there's a movement across the entire state of Maine where there are so many great ocean institutes and marine institutes and environmental organizations to try to figure out how to raise a rising tide. So we now have an organization called the Maine Marine Science Consortium, which includes JMRI, Gulf of Maine Research Lab, which is right here in Portland, Hurricane Island Lab, Down East Institute. And we partner with all of them. And my hope is that we will all be able to help each other share analysis, share expertise, share personnel, and share just moral support, because working in climate change can be soul-crushing at times. And yet they're a really great group. And I'm very happy that I have Janet Duffy Anderson is in the audience. She's the Chief Scientific Officer at JMRI. So thanks for coming, Janet.
Hi there, Nancy Flagg. I'm a PhD candidate here at USM. Woohoo! Thanks. I am studying leadership, and I'm working on a project to connect Dominica to Maine because they have a very precious coral reef that is in danger. And I'm wondering, you were talking about having students come to you. That would not be feasible for this project, but would there be online options or things like that that could connect?
Online options. I'm sorry, I missed something. Online options.
What could connect your laboratory with the college in Dominica?
So in terms of, we offer webinars that they could tap into maybe. During the pandemic, we had virtual REU programs. We don't currently do that. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Let's talk.
No.
Hi, Mark Clements from Baywood Consulting, and I'm going to form a question for the students. How would they best interface with Bigelow, and how would they get on these internships so that they can stay there?
Right. So if you go online, you can access all the application materials. If you have any questions, we have an excellent education coordinator, Evan, who I think that he's the link, and he could send him an email. If you can't find that, I've got a bunch of cards in my pocket. I would encourage you, we're highly competitive, so don't be sad if you don't get in. We have to match you with a scientist. But if that happens, we can also, ocean science is not very big, right? It is a pretty small community of researchers across the country, and we might be able to hook you up with other places as well. So if you're interested in ocean microbes, consider applying. And you can find all that information online, or if you can't find it, email me, come and get a card, which you should do if any of you want to go into marine science, because you can shake my hand and I will be in part of your network, which is what you should be doing. And now I'll stop being a college professor.
Eliza Kenningsburg. I'm here from the Gorham School District. Thank you so much. Really, really leaving this inspired. I am wondering, I'm thinking about my next community potluck coming up. I live 3 blocks from here. And I'm just wondering if you can give me a soundbite. What do you think I should highlight when I'm talking about Bigelow? What is like the breakthrough or project you think is the hookiest for the average person?
You know, the thing that people seem to get and ask me the most questions about are honestly the cows, right? So the idea that you could use algae, which a lot of people don't think about, to change the concentration of methane in the atmosphere by feeding something made out of algae for a cow. I think it's a pretty simple message, and I think it shows the breadth of the kind of stuff we're doing. Never in a million years did I think I'd be worried about finding enough cows when I was in grad school. So I'd use that one.
I will. Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Deb. It's Margaret Angel.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks so much for this. That was fantastic. Will you lay out how, you talked about discovery to solution. Will you lay out how you think about your translational processes at Bigelow and where you think the lab has its strengths, and then where in the translation process do you need private or public partners to help you get the discoveries out into the market and having impact, and also, importantly, I think for all of us on the research side, returns into your business?
Right. So, but this is Margaret Angel. She's the head of the Rue Institute, which is another one of our partners. Sorry, I didn't see you there, Margaret. So I wish I could bring Beth Orcutt up here because she just gave a talk on this yesterday. So there are different technical readiness levels that you can look at what a project is. And, all the way from 1 to 9. And in academia, we are really good at those first 3 levels, generating ideas. But then to get them all the way to the point that, say, an investor wants to give you a lot of money to move it to the market, they call it the valley of death. And it's a problem for all universities and nonprofits because a lot of the money that is available for that activities, you're not eligible as a nonprofit. You have to be a for-profit entity. And so Beth right now is looking at trying to find some novel ways to get around that. And can we partner with organizations that's what they do? They work with scientists as the business entity that can then write the kinds of proposals to organizations to get that funding. We have not cracked that problem. We're trying a different approach, and I just heard about some of it, and we're in the process of doing a new strategic plan. And Beth is going to be presenting this to our Applied Research and Commercialization Committee of the board next week, which is full of people that can help us with these kind of things. But it's as you know, it is a really tough problem. We are nearly at the point, I think, with the Coast Cow Consumer Methane Cow Project, that we could start looking for larger investments to actually get that into the market. But that's because we had a wonderful philanthropist that over the course of 4 years gave us, $15 million and allowed us to pay for IP attorneys, FDA consultants, because how we design an experiment to publish it might be different from what the FDA wants to see to certify it. So you need all of these other expertise to do that. That's not common in universities. So, finding other people to partner with and other organizations that can do the kind of work that we don't do is really critical. But we're still in the early stages of that. And I hope, 3 years from now, I'll be like, let me tell you how to do it. But we are not there yet. Yes.
Peter Plum. Is this on?
Yep.
Oh, good. Peter Plum from Portland. This is changing the subject a little bit, but you showed a lobster tail up there that didn't look too good. And I'm wondering what you can tell us about what's going on with the lobsters in the Gulf of Maine.
So, the biggest story is that, like all organisms, lobsters have a temperature optimum that they want to live in, right? And when the temperature gets too warm or too cold, they're going to either move north or south to try to get back into that up. So the biggest issue that we've seen over the last, say, 30 years is that as the ocean is warming, the lobsters have been marching north because the water's warming. They want to get into an area that is, again, within their temperature optimum. So there used to be a vibrant lobster industry on Long Island, and that is gone. Then it was a vibrant lobster industry on Cape Cod. In many respects, that is gone. Now they're in the Gulf of Maine, and Maine has really benefited from that. We are now seeing that they're moving into deeper water because deeper water is colder. So as it's warming and the shallower water warms faster, they're moving into deeper water. And, I mentioned that thing about the problem with the baby lobsters. So one of the big deciding factors of whether a little larval, little baby in the ocean makes it to an adult is, can they eat fast enough when they're that small before they get eaten? And the problem is, as it's warming, their metabolism goes up. Just like when we're out, working in the yard when it's really cold versus really hot, we are breathing faster when it gets really hot. Same thing with a lobster. And so an ocean acidification, and that comes from carbon dioxide we're putting into the atmosphere, moves into the ocean, and the first chemical reaction that happens creates an acid, and it's making the ocean just a little more acidic. And because lobsters have shells and need to build shells, that takes energy. And if it's in acidic water, it makes it just a little bit harder. So they have to eat just a little bit more. And so what we think is, really one of the bottlenecks is they can't eat fast enough because their metabolism has increased and keeping their shell intact. So that's kind of one of the first issues, and it's all around temperature and acidification for the lobsters. The second is just disease, right? If you are stressing out a lobster, right? I said adult lobster, it's pretty hard to kill an adult lobster. If you've got a grown lobster, that thing is pretty hardy. But if it's in an environment that's a little warmer than it wants, there's more pathogens in the water, it's going to have to work harder to defend itself from those things. And sometimes they just can't do it. And that's when you start getting things like this epizootic shell disease. Yes. Hi, Janet.
Hi, Deb. Janet Duffy Anderson. I'm with Gulf of Maine Research Institute. And I really think you did a fantastic job today. Thank you. I want to kind of think a little bit about climate change with you. We hear a lot of, kind of the doom and gloom about climate change, but, I think also there's a lot of potential for resilience and adaptation. And I'm curious from your perspective, particularly Bigelow's sort of lower trophic perspective, looking at algal communities and zooplankton communities. Can you talk a little bit about the potential for resilience and what we can be doing to kind of lead into those nodes of resilience and foster that as we think about climate change and how to adapt successfully to that?
Right. So if you're talking about the ocean microbes, one thing about the tiny things in the ocean is they are the largest kind of knob, if you can turn that knob, that we have to control carbon and where it goes on the planet. And so right now we've got to do two things. Humanity has to do two things. We've got to stop putting out so much CO2. So, mobilizing them to make a supplement for cows could be one example of that. The other is trying to look at natural processes that happen in the ocean. Is there a way we can turn the knob up that will draw more of those gases down? One example of that we're studying is we have a guy, Dave Emerson, who studies iron and iron-producing bacteria. In many parts of the ocean, especially all around Antarctica, there is a lot of excess nutrients that are just hanging out there. Now, if the microbes, if the phytoplankton down there sucked up all those nutrients, they would take a lot of carbon with them, right? And so if you look at past ice ages, all that nutrient was already consumed. So there is something that's keeping cells in the Southern Ocean from using those nutrients and drawing down carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, and that is iron. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago when I was it's 30 years ago when I was in grad school, being honest, there was a lot of energy that went into trying to look at, can we fertilize parts of the ocean with iron? And with the technology at the time, we basically said, no, this is a bad idea. And I think it speaks to the desperation we're starting to feel now that we have raised that prospect up. But there's also new techniques now that we might be able to use to fertilize parts of the ocean to draw down carbon dioxide. And if you're going to do that, you got to do it at a massive scale, or it's not going to work. But to your resilience piece, and this is an area that Gulf of Maine Research Institute works in and does a lot of community interactions. the one thing in terms of resilience I can say is I hear a lot of, after these big storms, we will rebuild. Well, we shouldn't rebuild what just blew down, because those storms are only going to get worse. That's one thing I feel like I would bet my dogs on, and I love my dogs. The storms are only going to get worse. So when we think about resilience, it's not trying to cling to how things always were. We got to be thinking about what do we need to survive and thrive in much, much stronger storms.
Hi, I'm Daniel Grayson. I'm with SNCC. And you mentioned that you worked for the NSF for a while, and now you guys get a bunch of your funding from the NSF. And I come from the industry side and then spent a brief while on the board of a research lab. And it does seem like a hard way to make a living going for NSF grants. How do you think the science funding process, as opposed to the sheer amount of funding, could be improved?
Okay, the first thing I want to say is the way he framed that was, I worked at NSF and now Bigelow gets a lot of NSF funding. That is an incorrect narrative. NSF, Bigelow always got a lot of NSF funding because it's that good. The other thing about NSF is, man, I don't know how we could be more impartial and rigorous through peer review than they are. Every taxpayer should be really proud of the National Science Foundation. It is a gem. So so your question was, how do we get more efficient? How do we get more efficient? Well, if you're in industry, is that specific for industry?
Well, no, it was more, I'm sorry, I talked about working for NSF, Bigelow. You see it from both sides.
I have seen it from both sides. I will say that one, we talk about there's not enough science funding, and there really isn't. But it's not a limitless, we don't need some limitless pool of funding to go into science funding. I think what I would love to see is our success rates, maybe in the 30% range at NSF. If you look at actual rates, and this could be a really long, complicated answer, which I will not do, but the actual success rates of a proposal that goes into ocean sciences versus what's funding, it's in single digits in many of the programs. That's too low, right? It means you have to be perfect to get funded. And it also, I think, really speaks to the quality of the science. So I'd love to see increases in that success rate. But we also don't want them too high, right? Because if it's too high, we're funding things that might not be ready for prime time yet. They need to be reviewed. They need to read all those anonymous, sometimes gut-wrenchingly harsh reviews to refine it. But we definitely need to see more funding. And I would love to see more funding in ocean science. And I have gone over again in my career from an idea that I want to support all science across the board. But we're in a situation right now where we're in trouble. And we have got to invest in the areas where we can turn the knob on climate change. And the ocean is one of them. And the fact of the matter is the United States is not responding to the extent that we should in responding to this. And one of the issues is I feel like many people feel like it's a choice. We can either respond to climate change or we don't have to. It's not a choice. We will either proactively fund the research, empower the industries that can turn the tide, or we will spend a whole lot more to clean up the mess that results from it. Man, what a change, because 15 years ago, I would make that statement. There'd be people in the back booing me. So yes, there's progress is being made. That's a sign for hope. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
Wow, that was a good note to end on. Sad, but inspiring, but not. But we got work cut out for us. A sincere thank you to Dr. Deborah Bronk for joining us this morning. One more round of applause. Today's event has been recorded and will be available for replay on the Chamber's YouTube channel, which is accessible through our website. To stay apprised of future updates, we encourage everyone to sign up for the Chamber's advocacy and events newsletters by visiting our website, portlandregion.com. You can view a complete list of all the Chamber's upcoming events on the Chamber's website, including Imagine Portland on June 20th that I mentioned earlier today. We hope that you'll join us for our final Eggs and Issues of the season on June 6th. It's going to be called The Power of Talent, Unlocking AI's Potential. Margaret Angel will be joining us, as well as Chris Mallett from the Rue Institute. They're going to lead a panel discussion among business leaders, employees, and students who seek to advance data and AI strategies together. So it should be a really interesting one. Thanks for joining and have a great day.